I will introduce the next speaker, and not many speakers get to have 2 talks in one conference. So you know that the next speaker is a really special guy. And all I'm hearing is the next talk is gonna be a super spicy rant. It's gonna be short and concise, and I need to tell you this. A lot of people here are coming from this handmade hero heritage, okay? So they have the similar ideas how C code should look like. And this speaker is coming from a wild place, okay? He's a hardcore C programmer. He has his own ideas, and now he's about to deliver a spicy security talk. So please, a round of applause for Eskil Steenberg.
Okay. So I take security seriously, but I've had it with the security orthodoxy. I really want secure software, but we can't let the security orthodoxy continue to unquestionably control the software community. The security orthodoxy assumes that security is the most important aspect of computing. It never is. Computers exist to get things done. If security was more important, here is a hot tip. Don't plug your computer into either a power socket or a network port. But most people do that because most people think that running software is important for things like running society. The only goal of researchers should be to the quest for truth. As for researchers, the security orthodoxy says that it's only able to judge what constitutes good software, and therefore does so from the most narrow of viewpoints. Real software developers is not into research. We are engineers. And engineers have loads of things to consider, and security is only one of them. And many times, security don't matter. Software development is to balance of different, the balance of reduction of bugs with the production of useful functionality for the user. It's always a balancing act. Despite what some people think, software can never be proven to work. You can sometimes prove that it reflects a specification, but you can't prove that aren't errors in the specification. And you can't prove that the intention of the specification isn't wrong to begin with. There is no way of writing software that is guaranteed not to produce bugs. All we can do is make the right prioritization to minimize bugs. Screaming and crying about how the world isn't perfect is childish and stands in the way of actual making things better. This utter failure to understand the reality of software development is evident when listening to the process advice preached by security orthodoxy. Essentially, security advice boils down to this: put as many checks on the process that making progress becomes so cumbersome that no one will ever be able to do anything. I know so many examples of hacks and lack of much-needed rewrites stemming from developers doing anything in their power to avoid onerous security reviews and lengthy recertifications. Writing secure software is as much about keeping the developers motivated to continue working on it as it is to employ reasonable security practices. Personally, I worked in game development for most of my life, and I can confidently tell you that if you're making a multiplayer game, spending any time on preventing cheats is a complete waste of time. The vast majority of games fail to find an audience, and focus your energy on trying to make a game that somebody cares enough to cheat in, rather than considering security. As a C programmer and a member of the VG4 team, for once, I would like to see a security expert consider that if all the most trusted software like Linux, OpenSSL, Apache, Python, curl, MySQL are written in C, then perhaps the people who wrote it aren't complete idiots. And perhaps, just maybe, C has some property, beyond the obvious shortcomings, that makes it the most successful language in history to write secure code in. Maybe it would be worthwhile to trying to figure out why that is. Research topic, everybody. But the security orthodoxy isn't really considering the real world. Case in point, the Linux kernel has over 2,000 filed unaddressed security vulnerabilities. You may think that that says something really bad about Linux. But if Linux really had 2,000 exploitable vulnerabilities, no one would run Linux. And whoever was brave enough to do so would be hacked instantly. Obviously, that's not true. In the real world, Linux is very secure. What it really says is that the security orthodoxy has dreamt up 2,000 bullshit issues that don't really matter in the real world. Yes, all bugs in security-critical software are C bugs, because no software written in any other language is good enough to be widely used and trusted for security-critical tasks. The survivorship bias of buffer overruns is overwhelming. Speaking of, buffer overruns aren't bugs. Buffer overruns are symptoms of bugs. And by the way, buffer overruns are not seriously hard bugs. ABA bugs, time travel bugs, UB elimination bugs, lockless bugs, aliasing bugs, those are hard bugs. And the people who find those bugs, they deserve our adoration. Your fear of buffer overruns just proves that you don't really know about the C memory model. So security researchers review code, and as such, they only see the bugs that are left behind and not caught during development. They see a bug in a design, but they do not see the bugs that the design avoids. As such, they want vulnerability mitigation, trying to somehow make bugs fail more gracefully. Software developers, on the other hand, know that bugs are found and fixed once they fail hard and fast, not the ones that almost work and don't really make much noise. So the mitigation strategies proposed by the security orthodoxy make some bugs less serious, but often results in a lot more bugs. Security research is a subsection of QA. Their job is to find bugs. That's it. They are not secret agents or cool hackers from some bad TV show. Finding bugs are good. And there are many good security researchers who quietly do this work, but it's a job, not a superhero identity. Finding a security bug does not make you cooler than finding any other QA bug. I find many bugs every day, and when I do, I fix them and I move on. What I don't do is come up with a cool name for my bug, and then register a domain, and then give talks at conferences about it. If you find a security bug in some important software, that's great, but you do not deserve to be famous, more famous than the people who actually wrote the software to begin with. It's the same bullshit that makes anyone with a badge think they are a lead action hero, and they're the only people who are standing in the way of saving humanity. You're not cooler than a nurse or a teacher or a firefighter or someone else who keeps society working. The security orthodoxy doesn't know how to be software developers better than software developers. If they did, they would develop software. So let's pretend they aren't. All this wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that we're actually living in a security hellscape. And we desperately need more security. I'm talking about the fact that every person is walking around with a tracking device that is owned and operated by a surveillance capitalist whose very existence depends on stealing our data. Our computers have massive security risks because they, by design, are entirely relying on online services. I'm talking about how the entire population is being fed slop to divert our attention away from reality and towards endless consumption. I'm talking about how a large section of society has lost contact with what is real because they are being manipulated for attention, control, and profit. I'm talking about how most people store all their data with someone else. You should not need the internet, passwords, secure connection, remote authentication, a monthly fee, and the consent of a corporation to access your own data. What does privacy even mean when people voluntarily install microphones in their bedrooms directly connected to a retail empire? The frog has been cooked. Much of today's software stack depends on hundreds of source packages that are without review, gets downloaded from corporate control repos, and compiled into system, any one which could have been compromised. Most of these are protected by two-factor authentication. The two factors are a password and a phone, where the first one can be reset by the second one, and the second one can be defeated with a SIM swap that is widely available on the dark web for purchase. Every time a service asks you for your phone number as an authentication device, they should be required to display the current going rate of a SIM swap on the dark web. Large service providers routinely lock people and companies from their accounts, data, and livelihoods without any recourse. This happens without explanation for fear of revealing their methods, on advice of the security orthodoxy. The same security orthodoxy who are preaching public security vulnerability disclosure when it's someone else's software being affected. It's like corporatized ransomware. Only at least real ransomware hackers offer human tech support and the ability to buy back your data once they've stolen it. Windows Update, which is meant to protect me from viruses, has lost me more data than any hacker ever has. The security orthodoxy worrying about potential hacking a voting machine somewhat misses the point when the entire electorate has been hacked with disinformation to begin with. Close to 10 years after Edward Snowden courageously revealed that what many of us suspected, that the US and many other governments engage in widespread hacking and surveillance of the internet, and that all major service providers have given them backdoors to your data. The security orthodoxy has not been able to even present a feasible alternative future to a world of us being perpetually beholden to the whims of a few megacorporations who, without any transparency, bend to any government, no matter how reprehensible. But that's just the thing. The security orthodoxy doesn't make things better. They don't create. They just complain about us who do. They complain, and people listen, and they obey without questioning their orthodoxy. They say, use managed languages because performance doesn't matter. Computers are fast now. Anytime you hear that, I want you to correct them and say performance equals efficiency. That equals battery life, hardware installation cost, power consumption, CO2 emissions. Slow software is literally cooking our planet. Sure, if something takes 1 millisecond, now it takes 2. What's the harm? Well, your phone having half the battery life, that's the harm. Whoever convinced the world that every computer, without exception, needs to be slowed down to mitigate transient execution CPU attacks is responsible for billions of dollars of increased power consumption, untold CO2 being released in the atmosphere, they should be considered on par with the Exxon Valdez or Deepwater Horizon disasters. By the way, off topic, you know who really deserves our adoration? Compiler optimizers. They should be treated like rock stars. For every 0.1% they eke out, every major cloud provider should just like send them $1 million. They should be given parades for their service to humanity. Forget about climate campaigners. Little children should grow up having glossy posters of compiler engineers on their walls saying, "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to save the world by optimizing IR2." The threat modeling of the security orthodoxy sucks so bad that one has to wonder if it's a deliberate tactic to keep us unsafe. Maybe they keep bringing up ridiculous fantasy exploitations like Rowhammer and an attacker's ability to get hold of credential by submerging our memory modules chips into liquid nitrogen, to make us forget that in the real world, dominated by corporations that employ a lot of these security orthodoxies, we're all pawned by default. Thank you. Send your hate mail.
All right. Round of applause for this awesome rant.
Let's all have a contest where we guess the out-of-context headline at Hacker News about this talk.
So, where do we start? So tell me, because this is like an unresolved tension, right? On the one hand, you want to have a safe software, right? Secure software. And on the other hand, it is very difficult to quantify how much effort should be put into. What would you say could be the solutions? Like, is there some easier framework how to navigate? How much effort should you spend on doing things, trying to like prevent attacks on various pieces of software, and how much you're letting this go?
So a lot of software doesn't need to access the internet. And we could start there. And then it doesn't matter, kind of, right? A lot of things that are online today doesn't need to be online. You could just control them and run them, you know.
You're talking about like signing into your calendar, for example, or
For instance,
like that.
why am I, you know, why do I have to have that, right? Why can't I have my own calendar? And there's a lot of things like that. But, you know, there's like, I want to edit sound. Now I'm supposed to do that in a web browser? Like performance terrible, everything's terrible, and you know, now I have to have an account and log in, and there's security, and like, why? Really? So I think there's a whole section of software that just doesn't need to be online or doesn't need this to deal with this at all. And then there are, you know, obviously we need software that is online, and then we can take the appropriate amount of you know, care to deal with that.
So how would you try to define what would be the appropriate?
I don't think I should, and I don't think anyone should. I think it's up to developers and you know, to make that judgment call. It completely depends on what kind of software you're doing, what kind of risk profile you're having, you know, and saying that everything needs to conform to the same thing is like saying that everybody has the same problems, or every you know, if I run an air-gapped machine, like, leave me alone. I should be able to do whatever I want, you know. And yes, I think we need to be much more flexible and accept that people have like different use cases. And the security problems we really have today are not the ones that gets argued about.
Okay. There's the camera. Okay. I'm gonna ask a question that internet will love, okay, but you need to behave in chat, okay, and in comments, all right? So we're talking to hardcore, long-time C programmer, and we're gonna talk about Rust.
Okay.
Everybody in the internet seems to see Rust as a sort of a response to the safety problems. Like, C's unsecure. Now we're introducing Rust for Linux, and we're introducing Rust to kernel. And Rust seems to be as a response to all the safety problems in general. I'm guessing you might not be on the same line. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, both C and Rust is they're different tools for different tasks, and they're both good at what they were intended to do. Rust was intended to be used in arguments against C, whereas C was intended to produce software. So, no, seriously, I think people should write new languages. I'm a hardcore C programmer. I'm never going to switch from C. And some people think that I'm against new languages or people who invent. I never want to be in the way of people inventing new things. That is just wrong. What I can't stand about the Rust community is sort of the we know better than everybody thing. And it's like, Rust has been around for 15 years now. And where's your operating system? Like, where's your SSL? Where's your software? Like, show me software that is actually better, that people want to use, that runs faster. And it's like, I don't see that. And I think the kernel is making a mistake right now by letting Rust in, not because Rust is bad, but actually because of all the drama. Linus Torvalds famously said that it's like, I'm not letting C++ into the kernel because I don't want to deal with C++ people. And I was like, okay, but like, hello, Rust. Like, it's a very, very toxic community. And if they just wanted to make a language and try stuff, great. I mean, I can't say that Rust won't be, dominant in the future. If that happens, then that future is a better future. Great. I'm not against that. But you have to actually build that software. You have to actually go there. You have to prove it out over time. And I mean, people don't remember this, but like in the 90s, everybody was like, oh, C is dead because we're all going to write everything in Java and everything's going to be safe and great, And what Java software do we run today? Like nothing, So it's like, it's easy to say this is the panacea that is going to solve everything. I'm a sort of wait-and-see guy on that. They have to actually make that software. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, I'm not the person who would like hate to run Rust software on my computer. That's fine. It's about the end results. Like, we write software so that people can use it, Again, the Linux kernel has a nice thing where, in their style guide somewhere, it says like, yes, there is a lot of go-tos here, and maybe that's not so pretty, but our code is not meant for you to be reading. It's meant to actually run stuff in the real world, and this produces better, assembly language, and that's what we care about. And I think that's like, I think that's what this whole conference is about. Like, we want to get through the bullshit of software engineering where people have all these like ideas about how things should be done and get down to actually writing software that produces things and does things in the efficient way. And so, yeah.
Well, this was more of the conference, so it deserves some applause, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think this security orthodoxy mindset is coming from? This is sort of like a psychological thing, right? Like, it's not like somebody's trained to, like, going through 20 years of security, like, brainwash, and then comes a security orthodoxy person. Like,
I think it's like, I mean, obviously, if you work on a problem, like, I don't know, if you work on anything, like you think that's the most important thing, right? It's like, and that's cool, right? Most people don't care about C programming. I do. I think that's important, but it's okay that the rest of the world doesn't think it's important. And that's kind of okay. It's okay that security people think that security is the most important thing ever. I think the problem is actually not that. The problem is that software developers don't have like resistance to that, that we don't argue against it, that we don't say like, okay, I get your perspective, but there's actually another perspective. We just like sit down and nod and sort of, you know, don't fight it. And I think that's actually the problem. So it's not really security researchers mostly, but I think it's sort of a feeding thing. If we start treating them as gods, you know, it might get to their heads, but if we treat them right, I'm sure they're great people, you know.
All right. Shall we then open up for the questions from the audience? Sam.
This is more of a rhetorical question, but when we've rewritten everything in Rust, will I finally be able to download a program from the internet and run it safely?
No. Basically, no, right? It's like, it may not have buffer overruns, but, you know, it may be written by Meta, and that may be way more scary than a buffer overrun, so...
But also, they might have written it in Rust, but they're still trying to hack me with the
Yeah.
virus. So
Yeah.
it's just open.
Rafael.
Yeah, I can't believe that I'm the guy that defends Rust, but there is actually software in Rust that I use every single day, and it's fantastic. That's RipGrab. But they, like, to their defense, they don't really state that they're written in Rust. I just have them. It's like way down there. It's not like if it's in the first line, like written in Rust, it's a no-go.
We're ashamed of it or something.
Yeah. And that to me is fine. I mean, I'm not putting shade on anyone writing Rust or making Rust or anything like that. I think it's the wrong approach, but I could be wrong. Like, the world should not listen to me on everything. They should, you know, I would like people to consider what I say, but then I would like a big section of the world to say, no, that guy is wrong, let's try something else, right? Because that's how you all teach me new things, by doing different things and, you know, teaching me something. So I'm, you know, I'm not against Rust software in any way, right? I'm against Rust people, you know, saying that, like, you know, all the people who've made software in the past that we all rely on are idiots, or that there's something wrong with them, or that, you know, they are a menace to society, or, you know, that's the stuff I think is offensive.
No, I just meant, like, there is actually some Rust software out there.
I know there is some software out there.
But I fully agree with the general take.
Wasim.
So do you think that this increasing security craze is a sort of a bubble that it's going to burst at some point and we're going to get over it? Or is the future is going to get more and more insane that we'll have to do with it somehow else? How do you see the future when it comes to security?
I don't know. I think we humans, we have a really bad risk tolerance thing, right? There's a bunch of things we do every day, like cross the street, and that is like dangerous actually. But then there are other things that like people are afraid of terrorists. And you know that vending machines kill more people than terrorists. But like, we gotta have a whole fucking department to deal with terrorism with like thousands of people, because terrorism, right? And it's very much like that. If you look at what actually harms you, it's not terrorists. Like, you know, that is not the problem in the world, really. But it scares us, and therefore we think it's the problem. So I think we, in general, are really bad at that. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, we live in a security hellscape. You know, when people... I think I read the other day that the average American spends 2 hours on their phone every day, right? That is like, if a hacker like locked people up for, you know, what is it, a 12th of their year, 12th of their lives, you know, that would have been like, if terrorists did that, holy shit, you know. But now, like, when Facebook and TikTok does it, it's like, whatever, right? So it's like, I think we're growing knowledge that, like, hey, the system isn't really good. And I hope that engineers, like people in this room, are trying to fix it. Because it is engineers who are going to fix it. Like, you know, it's really, really easy to hate on Mark Zuckerberg. But I just want to, like, tell people, like, Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook because he sat down in his dorm room and wrote it. He created something, and that, you know, people chose to get on Facebook. And all the people in this room have the ability to sit down and write stuff and make things come into being that wasn't there. And there's a lot of people out there who, you know, spend a lot of time writing angry articles in magazines about, ooh, Mark should stop doing this. Well, that's Mark's kingdom because he built it. We can build our own kingdoms. We can build our own alternatives. And the power of software engineer and engineering in general is that we can make things happen. And that's why, you know, I think that people need to think about this differently. And as software engineers, we need to stop living in this bubble of that the things have to be the way they are and start building the future we want to see that is secure, but secure in a different way from this orthodoxy.
I think that's a great vision, positive vision to build something that will be better than instead of complaining and writing angry articles. Do we have any more questions? So I think we're exhausted the questions. So thank you one more time, Eskil, for a great talk.
Thank you.
A round of applause, Eskil Steenberg.
If I could just say one more thing.
Of course.
I didn't do this after my first talk, and I should have. I want to thank the people who put this thing on. It's like you've dragged us out into the middle of nowhere. But the thing is, by just asking us, we came, right? Because we care about this, and we wanted to meet you. We wanted to hang out with you. And I think so many people out there think that, like, they're not welcome, or that, you know, you can't do this because you live in a small city, or you don't know anybody, or you're not in the inner circle or anything like that. And it's like, these guys prove that, like, no, you are welcome. We want to come to your small city. You know, if you do things, people will care. And I think that's a really, really important message that I want this conference to continue, but I also want people to look at this conference and see that, like, you can do things even if you're not in Silicon Valley, even if you don't have billions of dollars. If you want to make something, you can. So a huge, huge thanks for the courage of the organizers to do this and put this show on. So thank you all.